Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
It's a beautiful Wednesday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Kikelu.
I'm sure it's the same everywhere in Nigeria. Good morning, I'm Ayo Makide.
It's a Thursday, isn't it?
Okay,
Well, it
sure
has
to
to
say. Good to know you've been there.
Well, I
You've
mean,
been all over the place.
it's a beautiful day, no doubt about it.
Wait, gentlemen, it's a Thursday.
Oh, is it?
It's a Thursday.
Oh, it's sanitation day.
I said Wednesday.
Oh,
Well, he said it's the same all over the place. You see what I'm
it's a
saying?
beautiful day, guys. Come on, beautiful day.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, when you have so many dates in your head, you just have to remember one thing or the other.
I mean, we just talked about those dates yesterday. And, I mean, it's barely 24 hours. I missed one of them.
Well, I think it might also not be. You wanted to say something?
No. Go ahead.
It might also be a good day to say. About 24 hours ago, a little less than 24 hours ago, INEC made the announcement of creating those new polling units. 57,000 plus polling units. And they said that there is no voting in mosques, no voting in churches, no voting in palaces. Pretty much saying anywhere that is known to one particular individual or one particular sentiment, that one is out of there. That might be deemed as a good beginning, generally a good thing really, because it literally brings voting exercises closer to people, needless to say that. But one thing that will be also very good to know is, are people aware and will people be aware that these polling units are actually near them? At a time when, on the one hand, the trust quotient is greatly depleted. We talked about the voting experience of people over the years that has continued on a decline. So while INEC has done its part, how are people going to know that these polling units are there? Because how many months, permit me to use that word, to the next general elections?
Well, are you asking for the people or the average politician? Because for the politician, it's tomorrow. But if you're looking at the proper months, I mean, it's still about 2 years to go,
wow.
clearly.
So it's just tomorrow.
I mean, the way we see time is different. But, this is quite huge, really. Because when you hear the INEC chairman saying, I mean, it took about 25 years or thereabouts to get to this point. I think 1996. To this point, and you wonder, for something very important, you see how hard it is to achieve some measure of upgrade, as it were. I mean, look at the Electoral Act Amendment Bill at the National Assembly. Yes, it's been said that they don't want to rush into things like that, but I mean, the dates that were given, first quarter, June, and now we're maybe looking at the end of June or early July, we still don't know yet. So I'm quite concerned how hard it is to achieve upgrades for the electoral system from time to time, because we've been facing these challenges. So if people have been voting in shrines, for example, they've been voting in areas that you wonder, how in the world is voting taking place here? You know what that will do to voter apathy if you have to go to a place like that, a shrine, to vote. Honestly, I personally would rather not vote and just stay back. If you have to go to a religious center or places that are quite tricky, you know what that will do to voter apathy. So we're still yet to see how this will affect voter turnout. I really hope this will work. But like you said, people need to know first that these polling units are now there for them, over 57,000. So voter education will be a major one to achieve success in this one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, many are still stuck in all those actions that have been taken, including yours truly. So it'll be nice to see where it's published, such that one can see and know, because it's one thing to say that, but when people see those things, so, it kind of registers. People
Absolutely.
can know what is where. I mean, I could have known that they were voting in shrines for years. So, well, yeah, a good measure, but you need to have a deeper look and ensure that those who they want to know what is where actually know, and then use that information, which is why they want them to know it in the first place. So, there you go. But then let's take you through some of the dailies and or some one just jumps out right now. Leadership. Yeah, let's start with leadership and take a look at the front page story on the front page of Leadership today. Outrage as FG seeks powers to control internet media content. Yeah, so many are wondering, where is this coming from? They didn't actually see this coming. So that's a big lead on the front page of Leadership here today. And then if you take a look at some of the riders as well. What? We don't have it? Okay. If you take a look at some of the riders as well, you see proposed amendment capable of killing broadcast business. That's ascribed to BON, the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria. NAS urged to whittle down NBC's powers to sanction broadcast stations, which is what you also see there. Publishers decry exclusion from public hearing, and you'd have thought that that's why they have public hearings, to ensure that players, key players, I think they use the word stakeholders, are actually there to contribute, because if it's their business, I mean, they should know a thing or two about what they think can be done to, if the intention is to strengthen and not kill the businesses. That's why public hearing is for.
Yeah.
So
what I was looking for in the story is, every time there is a plan by the authorities to do something, they always reference examples from other countries. This happens in this country.
When they want to do something that they want. This
happens in this country. But in this particular story, I didn't find in the story any reference to, okay, this is how it's done in so-so country. Maybe there is, but I didn't find it in the argument of the Honorable Minister of Information. So I'm wondering.
In China?
I didn't see any example, at least no reference.
I mean, for the Twitter ban, for example, there were references given.
Exactly.
And I mean, the countries that were mentioned. And what is quite important for me also in this process, and I think you referenced that, is the legislative process. I think it was last week one of our guests was talking about public hearings. I mean, people come for public hearings, points are raised, but when the bills are passed eventually, you don't see those points. And he was asking, really honestly, that, so what's the point of a public hearing? Why organize a public hearing and none of those issues raised are reflected? So it's as though you knew what you were going to do, you just called for a public hearing just to fulfill all righteousness, as they say. So if we keep having public hearings and
spending money on
them, and those issues don't reflect, I mean, it's a big concern, because that's a major part of the legislative process of democracy. Because, I mean, we operate a representation, so people's voices need to be heard. And when you see the headline, to control the internet, it sounds like, I mean, you can regulate, but when you see control, it's like you're controlling information that people have access to. It's a lot, really, for me. And we'd like to hear from you what you think about it, so you can send us mails regarding that. So let's know what you think about that move. I mean, it was at the National Assembly, and you could hear one of the representatives suggesting to the minister, and Twitter as well, and there was a whole laughter across the room, and you were wondering what's the thinking behind that. So that's going to be a major one, definitely.
Well, hopefully we'll bring that to you, maybe, so you can see for yourself, maybe as we progress.
Okay, let's move on to the Vanguard newspaper this morning. The big story is no law on open grazing in Nigeria. That's coming from the Senate spokesman, Bashiru. So, let's take the riders. Adds grazing reserve law in northern Nigeria criminalizes open grazing. Interesting, right? Malami misled Buhari on grazing routes. Falano. FG should jettison grazing routes. Afenifere. Willing states waiting for FG support on ranching. Nigeria has 415 grazing reserves in 21 states, 141 gazetted. And you see, Oyo, Ogun, only southern states with grazing reserves. There's so much riders here. Plateau initiates bill to legalize ranching, yet to receive FG's 80% funding. So you go back to that one that says willing states waiting for FG support on ranching. And finally, states should take up and run grazing reserves. Agric Ministry.
Which ministry? Is it the federal ministry or state ministry?
Said states should take up and run grazing reserve. I don't know, but having read this headline and the writers, I'm honestly a bit more confused, really, because there's different conflicting, angles to this. But I mean, that's what you get. Page 5 of the Vanguard should try to give you insight into the thinking of governments, states, and different levels. And just one more, you see, herders attacking crops, farmers in my state. Wiki pushes for legal backing against open grazing. Commuters stranded as youths block Benin Auchi Road over killing, kidnapping. So it's safe to say that this talk about grazing, ranching and all is like the major one on the front page of the Vanguard this morning. And it clearly shows that we need to do much more regarding that. So Mr. and Mrs. for you this morning, just to douse attention. But just before that, you see NPAN expresses shock over exclusion from public hearing on press council bill. So there you go again.
That same, the one on the front page of the leadership newspaper.
Yes. So there you go for that one. You know what? You could pick up a copy of the Vanguard and take a look at Mr. and Mrs. this morning. Let me just tease you with it. That's the Vanguard for you.
Okay, Daily Trust newspaper talks about 774,000 jobs. Thousands of participants yet to get stipend. Interesting. Few receive 1 month allowance instead of 3. And there's a statement in parentheses. We were shortchanged, paid in cash. What happened to the cashless policy? Banks delaying payments, says NDE. Okay, now I'm confused. We were paid in cash and then banks delaying payments, says NDE. Well, you have all of the details on the inside pages this morning. Page 5 to be specific. The image you have on the front page there is the breakdown of those polling units that INEC talked about, state by state distribution of the new polling units. After 25 years, INEC creates 56,872 new polling units. Also breaks down per region, per geopolitical zone, beg your pardon, in the country. And so many other stories you'll find interesting on the inside pages of the Daily Trust newspaper. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, gentlemen. I eventually did go back to read Mr. and Mrs. on the front page of Vanguard, and I know why Kayode did not read it. But let's look at New Telegraph for you and what they have on the front page. Federal government seeks powers to regulate social media, internet broadcasts. NPAN flays exclusion from press council bill public hearing. Lawyer drags federal government, AGF, minister to court over Twitter ban. So you find all the details on page 3 of the paper. You have a number of other stories there. Federal government mulls comprehensive restructuring at SON, so that will be the Standards Organization of Nigeria, to decentralize enforcement powers. Agency may return to ports soon. I think we need to make up our minds if we want them at the ports or we don't. 1 minute we complain that there are too many agencies at the ports. Next minute we think, oh, they should actually be back there so we can monitor what's going on. But are we really monitoring? Page 8 will give you details. You have this one now. Lagos Kano lead as INEC creates 56,872 new polling units. So they also have that story for you on the front page. North FCT 31,196. South 25,676. Announces date for Ekiti. Oshun Gupapos. PDP vows to stop Onochia's confirmation. It's a page 4 read for you. You have a number of other stories beneath the nameplate, which I'll leave you to do yourself. But you might want to see what the Minister for Labour is saying on, I don't know. Well, you just might want to read what he's saying about whatever he's saying. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
All right, I said the Tribune. I also know why Kaide did that Mr. and Mrs. You should proceed. It's quite interesting.
I mean, it was time.
There's a moral in the story. Don't ever forget your processes.
I'm procedures, right?
Okay. Okay, take a look at Nigerian Tribune. They've got something completely different from what you've seen perhaps previously. Presidency attacks PDP governors, accuses them of not supporting solution to herders' crisis, says their call to stop Naira devaluation will damage export others. World Bank report on poverty exposes Buhari's presidency, PDP. It is unconstitutional for presidents to shift security responsibilities to governors, Wike. Either north or south. No law of grazing routes in Nigeria, Osun Senator. So all of that associated with that big lead on the front page of Tribune here today. Well, yeah, they equally have what you may have seen previously. INEC removes 749 polling units from palaces, mosques, churches, shrines, increasing polling units to 176,846 after 25 years. Lagos, Kano, Kaduna get highest converted voting polling units. Ekiti, Osun polls hold June, July 2022, but you got one coming up this year. And that will be Anambra governorship elections. Don't forget that one there. Well, yeah, that's Tribune today.
Well, the big story on the front page of Nigeria News Direct is something on the PIB, saying passage of PIB bill will stop downstream problems. That's also one bill that it's been a long time coming. And this one is credited to Ipman. It's a page 3 read. You might want to find out what they're saying, but also, I mean, where's the bill? Recall the fracas, I say, that ensued at the National Assembly months ago, and it just painted just how important that bill is. So page 3 of Nigerian News Direct this morning, and that story about INEC, of course, makes the front page. INEC removes polling units from shrines, palaces, creates additional 56,872 polling units here. That's the figure. But the big picture on the front page shows the Yaba bus terminal commissioned by Lagos State Governor on Tuesday. So last week it was a train station. Now a bus terminal. If there's anything that Lagos needs at this time, it will be an efficient transportation system.
Absolutely.
Really. I mean, very nimble, very efficient. I mean, I don't need to tell you traffic and Lagos, how they go hand in hand, as it were. So if we could just solve that problem, at least make it less cumbersome to move around Lagos. Imagine what that will do to the economy of Lagos.
Don't also forget the responsibility that the people themselves ought to take in terms of how they move around, how they drive and stuff like that. And then while talking about that, let's also reiterate something that you mentioned yesterday, which is the robberies that happen on the highways. In broad daylight, it's not something hidden anymore. In fact, people will show videos on WhatsApp how these things are happening, and it's like people are at a loss.
Oh yeah, I spoke with someone who experienced it, and he said he actually beckoned to policemen who were not far from there, and they just said, okay, we're good, you can move on now. So if that's what's happening, that's a big challenge. But that's Nigerian News Direct for you.
The Daily Times newspaper this morning is also talking about Minister seeks power to regulate private broadcasting, social media in Nigeria. That's what you have on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. The story is on page 2. Elections. Ekiti Osun governorship elections hold June 18, July 16 next year. Subscribe to the INEC chairman. A number of other stories. World Bank report, Buhari lied. Nigerians hate by worst poverty, says PDP. The story is on page 3. Right above the nameplate, President ill-advised, no grazing routes law. The story continues on page 5 of the paper this morning.
Well, let's quickly take a look at The Guardian for you, if you can see it. Queries as federal government plans sale of TCN, that's the transmission company of Nigeria, to complete power sector privatization. Amadi, unbundling TCN may go the way of discos, gencos. Faniron, government has no good track record in asset sales. It's a page 2 read for you. You know that the gencos had been long privatized, so have the discos. The only link in the middle is the transmission company of Nigeria, which the federal government still controls 100%. And now there's talk around and wanting to privatize the transmission company of Nigeria. Initially, the federal government had argued that it needed to hold on to the transmission company of Nigeria for security reasons, for, I don't know, there were a number of reasons, and it revolved mostly around security, for ensuring that the federal government still had some control, had some say, and ensuring that it was an effective way of distributing power. But I'm sure that if you ask a number of Nigerians right now, you know, what the experience in power supply has been, you will find out that, you know, it's not been very, very pleasant. And it would seem that the weak link so far has been the transmission company of Nigeria. Yes, the discos have their own, you know, kettle of fish, which they're dealing with, but generation, we seem to be doing pretty okay there. But in terms of transmitting, we understand that now we have the capacity to transmit as much as 7,000 megawatts, which is still very little compared with, you know, where we ought to be, you know, for a country of about 200 million people. But what is currently on the grid? What is fed on that grid? As at 2 weeks ago or last week, we understand that, you know, they could only carry about 3,000 megawatts on the transmission lines. What is that going to serve? Who is that going to serve? So there are huge questions as to, is privatization the way to go? If we do go that way, you know, what will be the implications? And from what we have done already, have we really seen the results? So big questions to be asked. This question, this story on the front page of The Guardian might be of interest to you. Queries as federal government plans sale of TCN to complete power sector privatization. You also have at the bottom now a number of other stories. Hazardous digital dump site, heightened cases of cancer, heart disease. Over 18 million children exposed to harmful e-waste globally. WHO report warns exposure to pregnant women raises risk of stillbirth, premature births. 72.6% of e-waste produced in 2019 were illegally dumped in low and middle income countries. Nigeria generates 64.2 billion naira worth of e-waste, ranks second in Africa after Egypt. SON Nigeria strengthening ties to check e-waste. Just in case you're wondering what e-waste is, electronic waste, you know. So when television sets are old, computer sets are old, where do those things, where are they dumped? Every year a new model comes out, phones, computers, you name them, everything, televisions. The old ones, where do they go? Oftentimes they end up in our so-called second-hand markets. So you might want to read this story on page 2 as well, on the front page of The Guardian. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Well, yeah, clearly, if the transmission capacity isn't good enough, no matter how much state or IPP is produced, they just can't feed the grid. So who knows?
Unfortunately, you can't store.
There you go. So take a look at that leadership, which we didn't see previously, Justin. You could see now. Outrage as FG seeks powers to control internet media content. That's leadership newspaper here today. So there you go. Proposed amendments capable of killing broadcast business. Born, NAS urged to whittle NBC's powers to sanction broadcast stations. Publishers decry exclusion from public hearing, and that goes on. So you definitely have heard this one now. So who knows what next? Well, that is it. We'll look at some of the dailies here this morning. We're back in a moment. All right, we'll be joined by Dr. Rex Mpanze, who is a team lead, Emergency Preparedness and Response Cluster for the World Health Organization in Nigeria. So he's going to be joining us to take a look at some concerns that have been raised about COVID. So, well, I guess he'll join us in a bit.
One of the things that I'm really looking forward, a number of issues have been raised as far as COVID-19 is concerned, in our part of the world. First, I remember, I won't forget, the question you asked the DG of the of NAFDAC at the time, what are our low-hanging fruits? And I won't forget that answer because it is still the way to go. Everyone else has, especially those in the research and pharmaceutical, space, have hinted at the need for Africa to go into phytomedicine, which is its strength. And that's talking about herbal medicine and all of that. That's what the NAFDAC DG mentioned. We also hosted the DG of NIPRID, who said the same thing, the need for us to consider homegrown vaccine solutions. The question is, how far so far? A good number have also said, look, if we're going to solve this problem, a lot of funding is needed. For research in particular, question then is, how far so far?
Especially when you know that, that's the pharmaceutical end to winning this battle. But there's also the non-pharmaceutical interventions, the very simple ones. It will seem the wear your face mask, maintain physical distance, wash your hands, keep your hands clean, especially at all times. So
you smiled when you said wash your hands.
It reminds me of Mr. and Mrs. this morning. Start to get out of my mind. But the point is, we need to bring all of this together if we're going to prevent a third wave in the country, especially because, with the projections we're having, it looks like it might be more likely.
Yeah, so, well, I guess we'll just hang on until Dr. Rex joins us now. All right, so we do have Dr. Rex on Panzi now. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, looking at some of those information out there, it raises a lot of concerns. But tell us, from what you've seen out there, how real is this threat of a third wave of COVID in not just Africa, even in Nigeria?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on this program. The threat of third wave is actually real, and we can see some manifestation of it already in some countries in this region in Africa. There are a number of countries in Southern Africa and East Africa that have already started to see what looks like a third wave starting to manifest. As we all know, the waves, from the information now we have that we are more than a year in this epidemic, are seeming to be coming every 6 months. So obviously for Nigeria, we had our wave at the beginning of this year, which peaked around January, February. We expect about a 6-month period of that really to have another wave. And if you have also seen the trends, the waves are to a large extent driven by people not really following the non-pharmaceutical interventions. And it always seems to come at the height of that behavior when people have really completely relapsed and are not at all following the non-pharmaceutical interventions. And secondly, it always seems to come when there's a new variant. So even when we look at in Nigeria, between the first wave and second wave, we can see that the predominant variant were slightly different. So the variants can either emerge within the population or they are imported. So we expect that indeed, because these threats, the threat of importation of a new, more virulent variant, or indeed an emergence of a variant locally, still persists, and these risks are real. And the only modification to this risk that should have happened, but we haven't been able to because of shortage of supply of vaccines, is really to vaccinate the rest of the population. So the risks, unfortunately, in terms of the third wave, exist in Nigeria and exist in many countries in Africa, and therefore it is almost inevitable that we will have a third wave. So that's really a response to your question at this point in time.
But what kind of impact would you say vaccinating high-risk populations will have on this threat? Because many nations, even in Africa, will say, well, we've done that to a large extent.
Yeah, as of now, for example, we take the example of Nigeria. The vaccination coverage that we have achieved with what we have done so far is only 0.8% of the population, and that is not going to have a dent on reducing the risk in terms of third wave. As you have heard multiple times, we will need to vaccinate in the regions of 60 to 70% of the population in order to now have a reduced risk. As you have seen in many interviews, it is clear that when people are vaccinated, one, it reduces the chance of acquisition of the virus. We don't know by how much, but significantly, we know for sure that it reduces also morbidity and death in terms of ill health. So definitely vaccination is the answer that we have to look to of making sure that we don't continue to have wave after wave, and we can have really a longer period of time without problems. I should caution, though, that vaccination is not in other words, the panacea, in the sense that if you are vaccinated and somehow, some way, a strain emerges that doesn't respect that vaccine, then you can still see another wave coming. And this is a threat that the Western world, who have gone ahead and done quite a lot of the vaccination, that really they are minding quite a lot, because although they have vaccinated their populations, the risk of a variant being introduced that may not respect that vaccination may come, and that may require that a new vaccine entirely is administered to the population. But definitely, even with that, we see that the main answer to this epidemic eventually is vaccination, of course, combined with the other interventions that we're already doing. Thank you, Andova.
Yeah, so if we could just paint a picture, maybe, what a third wave might look like. We've seen the first wave, we've seen the second wave, but with the projections, what can this third wave look like in terms of the cases? Will it be remarkably higher than what we saw during the second wave, or with the vaccinations we're seeing, it might be tapered down a bit? What do you foresee?
So there are many factors that will determine really what the third wave will look like. The first and probably the most predominant factor is the variant that predominates in the third wave. If you have a more virulent transmissible virus, as the case has been in terms of driving the two subsequent waves, is that we will eventually see a higher caseload, because there will be more transmission, and eventually, really, as we have seen in other countries, probably higher fatality and also morbidity. But also, as I said, there are other factors, and these are factors in terms of what we do now to forestall the third wave, or to prevent it, or to mitigate it. So if we are successful in doing the mitigation measures, for example, making sure that we have repositioned all the required capacities to deal with the third wave, we can forestall it quite quickly in terms of making sure that it won't go on for a long time. As of now, I think the average period that a wave has lasted is about 3 to 4 months. So we can forestall it quicker. There have been countries that have stalled a wave in less than 3 to 4 months. So, but that depends on how prepared you are towards that third wave, and also the preventive measures that are in place. So depending on really all the combination of this, the virulence of the virus that will drive the third wave, and then the mitigation measures of prevention, preparedness, as well as other measures, we can reduce the impact of the third wave and make sure that it doesn't become as high as the previous waves, or more devastating than the previous waves. Thank you.
Right, so have we been able to get an answer to the question around why Nigeria, even with a population of 200 million, didn't record as much cases and fatalities as first were projected? I mean, I recall earlier on during the pandemic, there were projections about what will happen to Nigeria. I mean, talk about bodies on the streets, the health system being overwhelmed, Nigeria really being battered by the virus. But I mean, it's over a year now since the pandemic, and we've not really seen those projections coming to life, thankfully. But more importantly, scientifically, have we been able to answer that question as to why those projections didn't happen, why Nigeria... If you look at Africa, for example, Nigeria with 200 million has not recorded as much cases or as much deaths related to COVID like other countries. So has there been any answer to that?
Yes, there are pointers to that answer. There's no definitive answer so far, but definitely there are quite clear pointers in terms of why that has been the case. First and foremost, really is that Nigeria, like many other African countries, have really not gotten the infection in terms of transmission at the rate that other European or other Asian countries have seen so far. Either because of the way our economy is set up. As you know, in Africa, majority of our economy is outdoors. And unlike in Europe and others where the economy is indoors, which are really conditions that perpetuate the spread of the virus. And we also know that there may be some inherent immunity possibly in Africa because we do suffer other diseases that have to do with coronaviruses, including diarrhea, and there may be those elements. So those have been looked at. But foremost, what I can mention also is compare Nigeria to other African countries. Nigeria has done extremely well. And that, if you compare that, really is as a result of the leadership and the kind of response that Nigeria has done as compared to other African countries. I think in Nigeria, if you look back, Nigeria was more preemptive to its actions. Even as of now, if we look at the sort of restrictions that Nigeria has applied, whether it's in terms of travelers and all that, Nigeria is a little bit more preemptive compared to other African countries, and therefore it has managed and successfully so to forestall, for example, importation of a more virulent variant so far, and as well as really successfully make sure that waves are contained in record time, and as you have rightly mentioned, successfully managed to have a case fatality ratio that is the lowest in the region. So Nigeria has really done quite well in terms of the response, I think thanks to the leadership and thanks also to the resources that the government and partners did put in place to make sure that this is possible. So all those are the possible reasons we can mention, but there's no one definitive one. And that's why, as we are preparing with the third wave, it's really to try to appeal to the leadership and try to encourage the leadership to put the same zeal as they have done for the first and the second wave, and the resources and preparedness and capacities at all levels to make sure that Nigeria continues to shine in terms of how really the country has managed to contain the previous waves.
You hinted at inherent immunity in Africans. Any idea where that came from? Is it just natural? Is the nutrition, which some have said it's probably in the things Africans eat in our diets and all of that? What's the origin of that, the inherent immunity you referenced scientifically?
Yeah, what is in the literature, what they are pointing out, which is not definitive, is obviously that in Africa, causes of diarrhea, diseases that we suffer in childhood, is the coronavirus. So there is a pointer that probably that may confer some level of immunity to coronaviruses in Africa. So there are also other pointers that have been made in literature in terms of the possibility of immunity, in terms of cross-immunity with other diseases. But that's the most definitive one in terms of the possibility that there may be some level of immunity in Africa because of that coronavirus.
Okay, so if that is the case, is there any way to, I don't know, reproduce or whatever it is to help Africans get locally made vaccines, since they already have a measure of immunity, just as you have said, owing to many decades of experience with what you have talked about? is there a way to multiply that immunity, whatever it is, I don't know what scientists call it, to create locally made vaccines? Because many have said that that perhaps might be a way to go for Africa, given that all other countries where these vaccines are made are having it worse.
Yeah, the answer to that is that really the way to go is to make sure that we vaccinate our African populations with the vaccines that are now present and which are quite effective. And in fact, it's possible that in Africa they may be even more effective because they will ride on a level of immunity that already exists. So it's really to use the current vaccines that are available. Thinking of Africa synthesizing only vaccine and then coming up with own vaccine in the longer term, that really will not help us with this epidemic, since we already have the epidemic. But in the future, yes, because as WHO has always indicated that the risk of outbreaks with coronaviruses in particular and other types of virus will continue even when we contain the COVID-19. So definitely in the future, Africa needs to strategize to look at how to build own immunity in various areas, including those future possible coronaviruses. But for now, the answer really is to get hold of the vaccines that have so far been produced and make sure that we vaccinate majority of our African population and indeed boost their immunity so that Africa remains, as we have seen, that it has not been as affected as previously predicted.
How about phytomedicine? Because I know that the Africa CDC has been talking about that, trying to create a system around it. And the World Health Organization is also looking at some form of partnership to fast-track that. So what's the vision? What's the hope? What's the process about developing phytomedicines that can work in Africa, especially for this pandemic that we're battling now?
So as we know, I think to start with is that for the current outbreak of COVID-19, it really doesn't have a definitive proven treatment. The treatments that are being used currently are supportive. And therefore, at the global level, there is an accelerator initiative that with partners has launched to really try to find more medicines, definitive and supportive medicines. And that initiative is going on. And in fact, the issue of corona vaccine is one of the products of that initiative of really trying to find effective medicines. And quite a number of African countries are partnering with WHO in that. And we know Nigeria is also partnering in a number of areas. And there have been discussion recently even for Nigeria to be looking inward on local manufacturing of medicines as well as vaccines. So this is a conversation I think that has come and has started with this outbreak, but it's probably not likely that we will be able to produce a viable medicines or indeed vaccines within the outbreak. So in as much as at the time being we need to source whatever is available, indeed that initiative needs to be strengthened so that in the long run, indeed Africa is able to produce the medicines, either supportive or definitive medicines and the vaccines to deal with future pandemics and indeed the infectious diseases that Africa is still dealing with.
Well, talking about future pandemics and the likes that may happen and hopefully not, but then it seems like from specialists like you have spoken to us about the possibility of these things. But many always talk about the challenge of funding for research to prepare for such eventualities that we hope will not happen, but could happen. And if it does, we should be well ahead of it. So rather than responding, the way we always have to respond, emergency and all of that, is there a way, how do we deal with the challenge of funding for medical research in a way that Africa, Nigeria, can stand alone and be able to get ahead of these issues before they become serious?
That's, I think, the fundamental question that we will need to keep on asking and try to find a more appropriate answer. And I'm aware, for example, in Nigeria, that the two houses of the National Assembly are asking exactly the same question. And indeed, each of the houses has a bill going through the House, really trying to look at issues on Nigeria, how to deal with health security. In fact, this is an agenda that globally we call broadly as health security. In other words, try to position health, the threat of health due to pandemics, as the same way as the threat of an invasion of an army from another country. So it's really a security issue. And definitely it has shown that, unfortunately, unlike even the threat of another country invading another country, that health security doesn't see borders or nationalities. So if something starts somewhere, it can as well affect you very far away from that because of globalization and travel. So this is something that I think was discussed quite extensively at the last World Health Assembly. And one of the resolutions, recommendations that came out of it is that really the world needs to go beyond the IHR international health regulations that were done in 2005 to probably move towards a treaty that is binding across countries, because it's both an issue of preventing importation as well as preventing exportation of infections to make sure that others. So realizing that really the health of one is the health of all, and therefore we are in together as a world to contain this. And linked to that, there will be a need to find a financial initiative that look at the issues of R&D at global level to make sure that we are prepared and we have the arsenal that is required to deal with the viruses that will emerge or any other threat that will come to health. And it's a global agenda, but definitely, although it's a global agenda, as mentioned in that light, countries themselves need to do all they can. And for WHO, we push ahead still the implementation of the IHR 2005, which pushes countries to be prepared for these eventualities and have all the necessary core capacities. And for Nigeria, definitely what the two houses are doing is in the right direction, because there will be need for resources. In other words, if you have a corona or a devastating outbreak like this, there should be a way whereby you're able to trigger a response with funds already available that you can go forward with. So definitely those mechanisms need to be in place. And also there should be a way whereby you can implement pharmaceutical interventions without going through processes of trying to make sure that you remain within the legal realm of implementing those elements. So definitely strengthening the preparedness of countries and make sure that they are ready to deal with whatever eventuality, the sort of standing army of health responders to such outbreaks will remain a key to what we needed to do at country level, but at the same time playing within the realm of the global level to make sure that we are also working with all other partners, developing partners, to do the R&D research and everything else to make sure that globally we are also ready to deal with these eventualities.
All right, Dr. Mpanze, just give us a couple of minutes. We'll be back in just a couple of more questions as well. All right, welcome back. Our concluding moments with Dr. Mpanze. So, well, yeah, you say that, well, the way out, the main way out is get vaccinated. But given the vaccine shortage to Africa, what should we be doing now? Dr. Mpanze, can you hear us? You have to unmute. We can't hear you, actually.
Thank you. Thank you much. I can hear you.
Okay, so yes, you say that vaccination is the main way out, but in consideration of vaccine shortage to Africa, what would you recommend we do at the moment?
So at the moment, it's really the two sets of interventions that we should continue doing. One is to prevent as much as possible in terms of the continued spread of the virus, even at the lowest possible level. And the second one is to prepare for an eventual third wave in this case. to make sure that when it comes, you can contain it and forestall it as quickly as possible. So for prevention, there are quite a number of interventions that we need to do. One and the foremost is really the enforcement or the push of the non-pharmaceutical interventions. These remain the cardinal ways of preventing coronaviruses and in particular the COVID-19. In other words, the measures that we well know of people keeping a distance, in other way, wearing face masks in public, especially in closed indoors, and washing hands regularly with soap and water. So these remain cardinal in terms of prevention. But in addition to that, of course, for the people to be able to practice those pharmaceutical measures, we need to intensify our messaging. And a program like this one are really quite key of making sure that the population keep their awareness at a high level of what they need to do and also the risks that still persist. And in addition to that, we also need to make sure that we continue with the vaccination, which is a preventive measure. So although we know that there is a shortage of vaccines, those who have an opportunity to be vaccinated, they should grab it really with all the, in other words, the luck that they have to make sure that as we get more vaccines, we vaccinate the population as much as possible. So those are the preventive measures that we need to continue. And finally, the last preventive measure is to make sure that if we find any case in any way possible, we aggressively investigate all contacts. We enlist all contacts, we test everybody, we isolate that case, and we contain that case. So those are the preventive measures that we have to continue and to make sure that we keep this infection at bay for a long time. In addition to that, of course, then as I mentioned, we need to be well prepared. So we need to look at the preparedness going forward. And preparedness means really prepositioning all the required capacities to be able to respond to the virus. So having the trained health workers that are going to, in other words, test, trace and treat really the different clients that will be affected by the public or to vaccinate. So that's really one level of preparedness, having those capacities. Making sure, for example, as we have seen in other countries, that we have adequate supply of oxygen, beds, isolation units. We even prepare on how we will do our burials if in case, God forbid, we end up having a big outbreak that outstrips our capacity in terms of how we bury the dead. So all those are elements of preparedness. So we need to make sure that we have looked through all those preparedness. What I always encourage people is that when we are doing preparedness, we always assume the worst case scenario. We don't assume, because we really don't know what is going to happen, but we assume a worst case possible to say, what if this happens? How ready will we be in order to contain the situation and be able to manage it at that level? So if we continue to push forward with these two interventions, prevention interventions and preparedness interventions, then we are sure that despite the fact that we still have a shortage of vaccines, which is one of the important preventive interventions, that we can still continue to forestall this outbreak from manifesting in a bigger way in the country.
Dr. Mpazanje, first, what's the worst case scenario?
Yes, the worst case scenario, I think we can assume that we will have a more virulent strain that can spread quite fast. As you mentioned, that there were predictions of really that worst case scenario, which has not come to light. So that prediction is still on the table as one of the worst case scenarios that can happen in Africa and indeed in Nigeria. So we still keep our mind to that is possible. And when we are doing preparedness, we always look to that to say, what if this really was to happen? How prepared are we to be able to deal with the situation in that case?
Okay, so in terms of adherence or increased adherence through increased messaging, you've talked about the worst case scenario. I mean, it's real for you in some sense. You have that information, or that's the sense of that information very close. But for the people out there, I mean, you've seen videos, you've interacted with people, we've seen people at different levels, from government to individuals, jettisoning those NPIs, I mean, in the face of increased risk of a third wave, as it were. So what more can be done regarding messaging? How else, really, can you bring that risk closer home? We're not trying to alarm people, just to ensure that people understand what is at stake here. There have been different types of messages, different ways that these messages have been put out. But what more can be done? Because where we are right now, it looks as though those messaging are falling on deaf ears.
Unfortunately, and that has seemed to be the case in quite a number of situations. As I mentioned, that one of the risks of the third wave or a wave in any case is when you see people they don't adhere to any or follow any of the messaging. Of course, as duty bearers ourselves at national level, together with the NCDC and other bodies, we always debate this, how best to do it differently, so that the messaging can be understood and indeed can be internalized towards behavior change for the people. But also one of the elements that is being pushed forward now is to make sure that the leadership at state level, the leadership at national level continue to hammer this message and continue also to push forward for enforcement of some of the non-pharmaceutical measures. So, for example, quite recently, last week, the whole leadership of the PSC, the Presidential Task Committee, was in Yola talking to the leadership in that region to really push forward this messaging so that the leadership can continue to push people towards adhering to the NPIs. And indeed, within the context of the duty bearers like NCDC and the Ministry of Information, they are looking at new strategies now on how to best communicate, because previous communication was based on the cases happening. But now that there are very few cases, how do you communicate to still be able to implore people that the risk persists despite the few cases? If we can import a new virus or indeed one can emerge, we can go back or even worse than what we have experienced before. So that, I think, it's an attempt that has to continue at all levels, by all leadership, by all duty bearers, to make sure that the communication continues to the population, that the risk has not gone away. We may have managed it quite well, but it doesn't mean it has gone away if indeed we relax our management interventions that we have put in place. The risk can come back and can come back harder.
So what about the thought of achieving herd immunity?
So the achieving herd immunity will come after we are vaccinated. So that definitely is the route to go. And we will have to push forward, and I'm happy with really what is happening globally, where developing countries are now starting to loosen their paces to see towards providing some vaccines that they have to Africa. That indeed, if that is done more and more vaccines become available, then we can start to push towards the herd immunity. But when we project that one and try to see when earliest that will be possible, looking at the current scenario of supply of vaccines, it doesn't come this year. It comes probably next year in 2022. So there is still a lot of time that we need to use the other interventions to keep ourselves safe until such a time that we can vaccinate our population and achieve the herd immunity.
All right, then, Dr. Rex and Panzi of the WHO Nigeria, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, we're back in a moment. You already have a lead on what focus is on next. Stay with us.
maganin ga wannan ya tura ita ba ta ɗauka jin da diga Owing to the nexus between escalating insecurity and mining activities, the federal government announced a ban on mining activities in Zamfara State in January 2019 and constituted an anti-illegal mining team to ensure compliance with the ban. To complement the efforts of the federal government, the Zamfara State government is inaugurating an anti-illegal mining committee. For Governor Bello Matawale, the setting up of the committee is imperative due to continuous illegal mining activities despite the ban, which is counterproductive.
It will be recalled that I personally spearheaded the arrest of some Chinese nationals conducting illegal mining activities in Bukwim local government area in April 2020. In order to curb illegal mining, the federal government has already established an anti-illegal mining squad. The committee we are inaugurating this today will therefore complement the effort of the federal government team while operating on the basis of following terms of reference.
The chairman of the Anti-Illegal Mining Committee, Abdullahi Shinkafi, promises to discharge their responsibilities in accordance with the law.
We are assuring the good people of Zamfara State for the government to find us worthy to serve in this committee. We are not going to let him down and let the good people of Zamfara down. But I'm calling on all sundries, traditional rulers, other members of the public to desist from any activities of illegal mining or to comply with the suspension of the mining activities by the federal government in Nigeria.
The committee's terms of reference are to identify mining sites in the state, their owners, and advise the state government on mining-related issues.
Was that the opening president?
Okay, so there you have a little bit of background on what's going on, but that linked to insecurity in different parts, certain parts of the country. But we'll shed some light on that, hopefully, as we progress. Professor Gbenga Okunla joins us now. He's a professor of geology, University of Ibadan. He's also chair, FG's Mining Roadmap Implementation Strategy Team. That's MIST. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Morning, okay. Chamberlain. How are you?
Well, good. Yeah, thank you.
Me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you. You know, when the government did announce that no-fly zone, many couldn't connect the dots at the time. But then we've seen the state government in Zamfara also take further steps, saying that they had about 100,000 artisanal miners before that announcement was made. But it turns out that illegal mining appears to be a thing, and there's so many perspectives to insecurity. So being in that federal government committee, so give us, from your perspective, what is the picture? What are we dealing with here?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. I think we are dealing with symptoms rather than really tackling the cause. And when you're dealing with symptoms and you're treating symptoms, it's sometimes continuous until you actually get to know and understand the cause and tackle it from the cause. We need to begin to understand the narrative of mining in this country. It's very important. Mining is a knowledge-based industry. It is not an ad hoc industry where you come in just and go with policies and actions. Yes, actions in between can help. But I think what can solve this situation is to really go back to the basics and to the foundation. There is an African proverb, if you will permit me, that says, yes, somebody who is physically challenged at the limbs, at the lower limbs, is carrying a load on his head. And then the load at the top is crooked and it's almost falling off. And you say, hey man, this your load is crooked and it's slighted and it's almost falling off. You say, look, you're only looking at the load. You're not looking at the crooked limbs below. So that one has to be sorted out. before the load can be straightened out. So we need to go back to actually the concept of planning properly. There is a roadmap, and which the federal government is also implementing. And I think they're doing it well, but we need to do more. When state governments now start having action committees or task forces, it's going to be endless. And I want to say this, if you look around us now, the concept of artisanal mining, illegal mining, is so complex now that it's almost getting to a breaking point. And that is the truth. Let's go to all the states. It's only in Zamfara. Go to Osun State, where there is some rush for gold mining there, or even some other states, even on the plateau, even in other states. The issue of artisanal mining is really being misunderstood. What we're having now, and of course, it's playing out in Zamfara clearly, as if there has not been any issue, of course, and it has really maybe got them to the neck, there wouldn't have been some kind of intervention at this point. What is happening is that what we're having is some kind of scavenger mining. This is not even artisanal mining. These are people who just come, they are not trained, they spoil the ground, they take what they want to take, there is no planning, there is no exploration. What I think will solve this issue is for the Zamfara State, Osun State, and all of the states that are actually involved in mining to Nigeria. We need to understand this. One, this mining is in the exclusive
even though the signal appears to fade intermittently, but we hope you can still hear us.
Okay.
You know, so are you suggesting that...
I'm hearing you clearly. I'm hearing you clearly.
Okay, great. Are you suggesting that state government or the committee set up by Zamfara State is going to be across purposes with that of federal government, and as such there would have been no need for Zamfara State to set up that committee?
There wouldn't have been any need for Zamfara State to set up that committee if things are done properly. There wouldn't have been any need. There is an artisanal, the federal government has a major artisanal mining department in the ministry. There are programs for artisanal mining. They need to just link up with what the federal government is doing. And there's the need for synergy. There's a need for synergy. There's a lot of insecurity in that area, partly, I'm not saying wholly, partly due to indiscriminate mining. And what they need to do is to link up what is the root cause of this. Who are the license owners? Let them link up with the mining cadastre office. This is where it starts. Who are the genuine mining owners? I mean, license owners. And if you have the license owners, are they really doing what they should be doing? Are they doing exploration or they are doing the real mining? There are different categories of licenses. The exploration license is different from the artisanal small-scale mining license. They should get them organized. And they should know those who are really involved in doing what.
Because there's this, there's word out there that those who sponsor illegal mining also sponsor cattle rustling and some of those clashes between mining communities such that they can take advantage and continue their activities. Is your committee privy to that information when you say it may be associated with insecurity?
No. I am not saying that those who are mining or sponsoring mining are also sponsoring cattle rustling. No. What I'm saying is in a situation where there is no organization, in a situation where it is free for all, it is, an ingredient for insecurity. Anything can happen. Go to any of the artisanal or so-called scavenger mining sites. The security there, anything can happen. Anybody can take advantage of that loose, disorganized situation. So I am not insinuating that those who are involved in or sponsoring illegal mining are all those. I think that's for the security agencies to look at. What we are saying is this problem can be solved. It can be solved. And I think if the Zamfara state government, with what they are doing now, integrates fully with what the plan of the federal government is concerning plans for the artisanal mining, and there is some honesty, there is real political honesty, and I have to emphasize it. There is real political will, there is honesty of purpose, and there is a way you tackle it scientifically, as is being stated even in the law and in the roadmap. This issue can be solved. Even the insecurity in the mining fields or the suspicion that mining contributes to insecurity in Zamfara State can be solved. Number one, I have said the best way to go about it. Who are those who are in the field? Who owns those licenses? Are the license owners themselves aware that wrong people are exploring or mining in their area? If they are not aware,
oh dear, well, we seem to have lost Prof there, but we'll try and reestablish that connection. But you know, while that went on, guys, some of the information out there, because if you look at countries like DR Congo, for instance, you know, rich country with mineral resources, and then that school of thought that, you know, you always have faith columnists or elements who sponsor those crises such that they can go in there and take advantage of those resources. So one wonders, could that be far from what is going on in these cases? Because you see consistently when the governor himself in Zamfara has said, look, some of these crises you see, they are political in nature. We've seen traditional rulers who have been deposed, some of them have been called out, some facing the law, the music, for being associated or sponsoring some of those things. So it appears as though there is always much more that meets the eye. There's a facade that this is just, you know, cattle rustling and banditry. So there are several articles out there saying, look, you have some of those who are involved in that, who are also involved in illegal mining. Well, I think we've got Prof back. So Prof, tell us, well, what has your committee done now in light of all that is going on? What kind of work is going on with that committee? Because if Zamfara state government has seen any results, as you suggested, they may not have set up this committee in the first instance.
I think the Honorable Minister of Mines and Steel Development, I think the Honorable Minister of Mines and Steel Development, the ministry will tackle that. And I believe there is some kind of activity already going on in that aspect. But I can assure you, what needs to be done now is a kind of synergy. There is, let me say this, the committee has been set up by the Zamfara state government. But in order for them to succeed, they need to now liaise fully with the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, especially the artisanal mining, and I think the Mines Inspectorate Division, and I think the Honorable Minister is doing a lot in this direction, and the ministry. So, and for a long-term solution, licensing and operations in Zamfara State. It takes also the state government to cooperate in this direction, and it takes people who are involved, in the in Zamfara State, and even in the security sector and the ministry. A lasting solution is this. There has to be organized mining. The Zamfara state government itself, we have said it, and any of the state governments will form what is called, special purpose vehicles. Form companies. Let there be organized companies. Allow these companies to operate. Let the task forces also be involved in, when I mean the task forces now, security task forces. There were sometimes this was set up within even the ministry, where you have people of the NSCDC, where you have people from the police and all that in the minefields, policing this. Let the mines officer also be involved in this, in monitoring. Who are the license owners? Who are the big time? Let's now begin to see how we can attract the big-time players, whether local or international, organized mining, it will fizzle out. I mean, this artisanal or scavenger mining will fizzle out. This talk about insecurity, relationship with cattle rustling, with the legal mining can be easily solved. So we need to put our heads together. What is the root cause of this? Who are those involved? Let us identify them. Let's do it honestly. Let the political angle, let's look at it honestly. If there is the honesty of purpose and we really know those who are not supposed to be there, they can easily be flushed out. And then protect those who really want to do proper exploration and proper mining. You see, I get so a bit sad about the situation in Zamfara because that is one of the richest states in Nigeria. That is a state potentially that may not even need federal allocation if they get the mining narratives right. If this is done very well, Zamfara state alone can be enough to, take care of its budget without even relying on
just give us a minute.
allocation.
Give us a moment, rather. We'll go to break and then we'll be back on this subject matter. Stay with us. Well, Professor Kola, you did reference, although in passing, but repeatedly to honesty, political honesty in all of this scenario.
Yeah.
What's going on with that? Why do you keep saying that?
Well, look at the situation. Hello?
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Hello. Now, look at the situation. Where are these people from? Where are the people from? Or the legal miners from? They're from the area. The local politicians, the traditional rulers, all the governance structure at the local levels will know them. They are in our lands. They are in the land. And so if the government is also, helpful in really serious, and I believe they are, in tackling this issue, then the political class have to do it clearly. They cannot succeed without connivance with the people. Many states, or at each level, whether in the traditional setup, the landowner, something, they now say, honestly, we don't
want
to allow this in our land. Then it can easily be solved. Whereas state has many companies, which is good. Oh, sure.
Okay, well, again, it just keeps fading intermittently.
And
but your response feeds into.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, Prof. Your response feeds into the narrative that some politicians are actually behind some of these things going on.
You're trying to box me to a corner. But
it's just what it's. That's how it comes across.
Not only the politician, but at different levels, there are quite a lot of people. Yeah, if there are no people helping them, encouraging them, and they have no support, there won't be any of these things in those areas. No, even anywhere in Nigeria where you have artisanal mining, or sorry, not artisanal, where you have this scavenger mining. I use the word scavenger mining. This disorganized mining. And if you come to my town, let me be very honest with you, and my area, and I see that you are a disruptive entity, there is instrumentality of the community. There's instrumentality of the political structure within there's the instrumentality of the structure in that area to stop it. So if the political structure can stop it, the instrumentality of the community hierarchy can stop it, then you won't have this issue coming up. The land, we want to see serious mining going on here. They won't have.
Well, again, we lost Prof.
When the real miners themselves with genuine license. Hello?
Yeah, Prof. The issue at hand is not
when the
new.
real miners themselves. Okay.
Yeah. As I said, as Jimmy mentioned, the connection is not quite stable, but we'll take as much of what you can give us as possible. The issues on hand is not new, and as you mentioned earlier, it's not restricted to just one state. Zamfara is just like a hypothesis of what happens in various other states across the country. So the issues around illegal mining and all of that is not new. And I want to believe that, you know, in the work that you had to do to set up this roadmap, you must have done some historical digging into how far back this problem is, and if there is a crux, if there is a foundation to the problem that we can trace.
Well, if I can say this, going back to history, up till about the 60s or 70s, truth.
Looks like it's one of those days, but well, yeah, but we'll, okay, well, while we're trying to see if we could get Prof's connection back on, I think we do have Sani Abdullahi Shinkafi, who is the chairman, Zamfara State Anti-Illegal Mining Committee. Okay, can you hear us now, sir?
Hello?
Oh, okay, Prof, you're back.
I'm hearing you very well.
Okay, Prof, just hang on a minute. Let's bring in Mr. Shinkafi. He is the chairman of that Zamfara committee that's just been set up. He joins us via Zoom as well. So, Prof, if you could just mute your connection such that we could just have him on. Mr. Shinkafi, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain.
Okay, so give us a back why this committee was set up, because we just heard Prof saying that, well, that committee would have been unnecessary because they may just be at cross purposes with what the federal government committee is set out to do, having already put in some measures.
Well, you see, the illegal mining committee set up by the Zamfara State Governor, Dr. Bello Mohammed Matola Maradun, is to checkmate the activities of the illegal miners operating in Zamfara State and to track down the unlicensed company that are still going on illegal mining in Zamfara State. And we want to holistically try to reimpose the ban of mining activities by the federal government in April 2019. That's the main reason of making sure that the government constitutes anti-illegal mining activities in Zamfara State. Let me refresh your memory. In the last year, 2020, a couple of Chinese companies, Hope National, were arrested by the police in line with also in collaboration with the state government, where some Chinese were arrested for violating the ban on illegal mining by the federal government, which were also paraded before the newsmen in the police headquarters in Zamfara State. So what the government was trying to do is to holistically trying to collaborate with the federal government to checkmate the excesses of the illegal mining. Because a lot of people are not conversant with Nigerian Miner Act, Regulation 2007, which is an enactment of the National Assembly. And then that act, the categories of the licenses are spelled out in the Mining Regulation Act, those who are entitled to mine. Also, the last will be grant by Nigerian Mining Cadastre under the Ministry of Solid Minerals Development. So some miners will get an EL, that's exploration license. The essence of the exploration license is to explore the resources in that mining site to authenticate the potential of the mineral deposit. But some people will now take it as a license to mine. And that will also an illegal mining. There's small-scale mining lease, large-scale mining lease, quarry mining lease, and the rest. And also to checkmate the allegation of collaboration between the miners and the armed banditry. But to my own view, the federal government has to critically or holistically try to get an intelligence gathering to know whether mining has something to do with the insecurity in Zamfara state. Because the issue of insecurity, back started with the cattle rustling, herdsmen and farmers clashes, and now turned to kidnapping and armed banditry. So it is on record. The former Minister of Mines and Solid Minerals Development, Dr. Kaide Paimi, will attest to it. That when he was a Minister of Mines, there was a village called Bindin, where 38 artisanal miners were killed in the mining pit, inside the mining pit. So if there is a relationship between the insecurity and the mining activities in Zamfara state, I think the record is there. And what is the security are doing without making sure that they provide the government with adequate intelligence gathering. So the essence of this committee, some people are looking at it as irrelevant, but it's relevant also because we want to use the people who are the soul of the soil on that mining site to find out what is the relationship between illegal mining or mining activities with the insecurity. And from there, we now know whether there's a correlation for some of the miners. The problem we're having in the Northwest, 80% of the mining site are occupied by artisanal and illegal miners. So I think it's very, very important for the state government to join hands with the federal government to enforce the ban, and because a lot of revenues and royalties are lost or are going into fizzle out into the hand of these illegal miners and some patriotic elites in the state.
Just to be clear, Mr. Shinkafi, has the ban on mining activities in Zamfara state by the federal government been lifted?
The ban has not been lifted and the ban remains in force.
So what necessitated the setting up of your committee this June when the ban of January 2019 has not been lifted?
Is to checkmate the excesses of those who are
Checkmating of what excesses? The activities are not even supposed to go on at all. That's, I mean, unless English is failing me here, it means that there should be no mining activities at all. So why illegal mining if the ban is permanent?
The ban is still in force. What I'm trying to say is that in Nigeria, there's a lot of lawless people in this country. And still, if I can refresh your memory, I said it earlier, some Chinese nationals were arrested last year for going on with this illegal mining in Zamfara, upon the ban by the federal government. And still there is some that are some lawless people who have been going on these illegal mining activities.
Well, Mr. Shikafi, just one moment. Have any arrests been made of those who are contravening the federal government directive of a ban on mining activities in Zamfara state?
Yes, I have said it earlier. Maybe you have not heard me. I said some Chinese were arrested and paraded by the police before the pressmen, which is on the national television. Even you are correspondent.
My question is because
but they are yet to be arraigned.
Now, if those arrests were made, are there mining activities, or rather illegal mining activities, going on right now in Zamfara states?
That is the reason why the committee was set up.
If the illegal mining activities are going on, it is illegal. Shouldn't there have been arrests?
There has been an arrest. There has been an arrest. And that is the reason why the government is trying to come up with the anti-illegal mining activities committee under my humble chairmanship to checkmate these excesses. Because this forest is very vast. It's a deep forest. Some places are even risky place for anybody to go. Because you have known for the past 8 years, Zamfara is under siege of armed banditry before the inception of Bello Matole administration. But it has been reduced to the minimum VRS level, up to at least we can say 50 to 65%. So that is the reason why the government is trying to collaborate with the federal government to make sure that there's total ban is being enforced.
Okay, I recall last year when the governor was speaking about certain gold reserve in Zamfara state that will be deposited in banks. So if mining has been banned largely, what happens to that drive really? Because the idea is to raise revenue from that area. So what happens to the artisanal miners, whom the governor says were largely responsible for the gold, I think about 30 kilograms or thereabouts, that was you have so far in that mining reserve. What's the thinking around that?
Well, precisely, if the ban has not been lifted, then the artisanal miners who are also licensed will seek to operate. And the gold reserve also, planned by the state government, has to also cease to exist pending the lifting of the ban. And but if the state government has a mining license to purchase and to sell gold, can go outside Zamfara State also to buy gold and reserve it as a reserve. You understand? That's what we call mining purchase license or mining buying center. If the state government still want to get that mining buying center, they still have the right to incorporate a company and also buy gold outside Zamfara State as a reserve. You understand? Because that license is being given. Yeah, you say what?
Pardon me. So when the governor said that gold was largely mined by artisanal miners whose activities are meant to be banned, when did they carry that out? Just to be clear on that one. Was that gold bought outside of the state or artisanal miners in the state?
Well, I'm not in position to give you that answer because I have not been involved in acquiring that gold at that time. So the main purpose of our committee is to checkmate the excesses of illegal mining. So anything to do with the gold reserve or gold ban or anything, that one, I'm not part of it. But what I'm trying to tell you, even if that's even the case, since the activities of the artisanal mining are banned and are not lifted by the federal government, so their operation also ceases to exist. So also if the state government is going to also buy the gold from an artisanal miner, indigenously from Zamfara State, so even the issue, the plan to go on with the gold reserve also has to be kept in abeyance. So this is it.
So just quickly before we take this back to Prof, 100,000 artisanal miners, that's the figure that was given, and I'm thinking that's at least 100,000 jobs. I don't know how many indirect jobs will be created as a result of that. We've talked about insecurity largely being as a result of poverty, hunger, and the rest. So literally taking the jobs off the hands of 100,000 people, aren't you worried that that might even worsen the insecurity that we've seen in recent times?
Well, the ban of the artificial manner from go on to mine, the federal government is from there out of employment. And you know, when you give an employment to our teeming youth, it's like you scare a society and you have created a wealth. And also improve business activities in that community, in the mining community side. So when this ban are being enforced and 100,000 Sinamana were thrown out of employment, then it is also trying to escalate the insecurity in Zamfara State, because an idle workshop is a devil workshop. When these people are thrown out of employment, automatically it's an invitation to insecurity, an invitation to poverty, an invitation to the loss of revenue, and any sort of social biases.
All right, so Mr. Shinkafi, does this mean that those 100,000 artisanal miners are going to get back to work with this committee of yours?
How can? They cannot go back to work because, you know, the issue of mining lease or mining activities is an inclusive lease of Nigerian constitution. And it's directly under the supervision of the federal government. If the government has enforced a ban, then the state government has no right whatsoever to lift up the ban. And the ban remained in force pending when the federal government lifted the ban. And the committee set up by the state government is to complement and to support the enforcement of the ban on mining activities. So the ban, whether you have a licensed operator or a licensed company or you are illegal miner, all the mining activities have been banned for the past 2 years, and it is only the federal government or Mr. President who has the right to lift the ban. So the state government has no right.
All right, I get that point. If you could just say, just briefly on this one, do you think that there is, or politicians are fueling insecurity in Zamfara also linked to illegal mining?
Of course, a lot of that is an allegation. Some top politicians who are in the immediate past government are directly or indirectly involved in illegal mining and aiding and abetting banditry in Zamfara State. It is on record. The vice state chairman of APC was arrested for allegation of aiding and abetting banditry. He was arrested by army, he was arrested by DSS, he was arrested by police. And it is yet for these security agencies to make it clear that he is not involved in this allegation of oil and banditry in Zamfara State.
Okay. All right, Prof.
Without any apology on the line to any politician, because it is on record, and the security agencies in Zamfara will bear me witness. This issue of illegal mining and insecurity are different things. You understand? Because I have sat in a committee which was presided over by former Inspector General of Police, one of the famous security expert in the history of Nigeria, MD Abakar, who is also an indigenous of Zamfara. I sat in that committee as a member of that committee. I knew what is our findings. I knew who are part of this issue of insecurity. Some of our traditional rulers, directly or indirectly, are part of this insecurity, and so that also involved in illegal mining. So this is something that we knew, and we know how to also checkmate those bad eggs in Zamfara State or in Nigeria in general.
To give us his concluding thoughts as well. Prof, could you go ahead? I mean, did you get any sense of political honesty, which you spoke about earlier on, having listened to Mr.
Yes.
Shinkafi?
Oh, yes, I did. Oh, yes, I did. And I think it buttresses my buttressed my point by saying, look, if we have some political honesty and the political will, the issues can be resolved. And I'm quite impressed with what I had Alhaji Shinkafi say about their willingness now to tackle this and work. Like I said, they have to work with the federal government. I said the issue of the community is relevant. Let me make a point very clear. Artisanal mining has a place in the Nigerian mining narrative. They have a place. I mean, if you have 100,000 honest artisans that are getting something out of the land under an organized setup, under a controlled setup, then that's a huge thing, reducing unemployment. But let's look at it. Who is an artisan? Maybe we need to start from that basic narrative.
I'm afraid, Prof, we're just about to end now. Okay.
Okay, but I would just suggest for them to do. It's a very simple thing. One, link up with the mining cadastral office properly. Who are the miners there? Who are the license owners? Who are the legitimate people on ground? When you know those who are legitimate people on ground, it's easy to flush out the fake. And that's now where the political will comes in. With the federal government, that place can be sanitized. Insecurity can be sorted out within a short time.
All right, Prof.
At some point, mining activity can start in Zamfara State. It's a potentially rich state.
We do thank you.
Properly. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well, Professor Gbenga Kwanla and Alhaji Sani Abdullahi Shinkafi. Both of you, gentlemen, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we do have some feedback coming through now. Well, all right. John Henry jumps right in, talking about illegal mining in Zamfara. And John Henry says, illegal mining can't be stopped until they tackle it thoroughly. Many people are benefiting from this crisis. The locals, the traditional rulers, the political class, etc. Let's be sincere. Government, state and federal level, know what to do to stop these issues. If not, we will continue discussing this issue till eternity. Eternity?
Wow. Let's hope not. Adenike Awe says, still on illegal mining, by the way, why is the government always playing catch-up? Obviously, there's a correlation between this illegal mining and insecurity in Zamfara State. The federal government has halted mining activities. What have they done to seal the area to prevent it? So too much audio without actions.
It's interesting.
Without video, right? That's Adenike's nail.
Well, Dr. Imosi says about COVID-19 cases, I believe the point why Nigeria did not record cases as initially predicted in the early days of COVID-19 is, but not limited to, the following. But not limited to the following, perhaps. There are a number of publications alluding to the fact that the receptor site ACE2, via which the virus uses to gain entry into the human host, is less prominent among Africans, and female folks have less of this compared to males. When you interrogate the NCDC data of confirmed cases, the number of positive cases tend more towards male folks.
We're in class this morning. Please go on. What's the second point?
Yeah, the second point. Also, previous exposure to SARS-CoV-2 has been reported to confirm a possible cross-immunity against SARS-CoV-2. This was published in Nature last year, 2020. Many Nigerians may be exposed already due to the kind of animals we eat. And the third one, a recent study in Greece hinted a possible role of BCG vaccination as a possible protection against SARS-CoV-2. BCG vaccine is active for 15 years and over a period of 60 years to protect against TB. By extension, this may well be active in our young age demographic. The issue in Nigeria is we are not interrogating the science properly, and our research arm of the pandemic is really weak. This is where we should lay more emphasis.
I think that the bottom line at the end of the day, research. Andrew Okman actually has this one, censorship of social media, control of internet and media content. And he says there is nothing to cheer about the introduction of such policies at this time. This is a beginning of dictatorship. Just wait and see. But my advice is not to wait and see, but for stakeholders to look beyond the less publicized, hushed, hurried public hearing and do the needful. Search around the world. Countries with media content control are those with iron-fisted leaders. It is not every policy dished out, especially in such a hurry, that should be accepted and swallowed hook, line, and sinker. Let stakeholders interrogate why the policy is being introduced now. And I think this last one is from Nze Tochukwu and talking about voting sites as well. We won't be able to take it now, but we will certainly... Okay, well, that's it on the... Sorry. We can't recover my seconds. But not to worry, tomorrow, because there's so many more meals. I see one on tinted glass, and I think there's something we need to get a little more explanation on, especially if citizens are being harassed with the policy, which is not quite clear on the tinted glass permits. But let us see how that goes. Thank you so much for watching today. I'm Maokwe Ogun-Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikele.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.
I'm Chamberlain Oso. Goodbye.